cherry cheese triangles for the assessment tasks for this week. Right, so it's best to get the Fillo pastry out of the fridge and use it cold. Once you've done that, unwrap the pastry. It looks a bit like this. Open this packet. Pastry should always be nice, soft, pliable, and because Fillo pastry is an extensible dough, it dries out, and it's such a fine sheet, it dries out very fast, right? And we want to use this while it's still soft. So the best way to do this is with a nice damp cloth. Squeeze all of the water out of it. It can't be wet. And keep that pastry covered in between applications. So the way I'm going to do this is I've changed the cutting and forming method to make it faster and to make it smaller and make it more consistent. And we will get 6 portions out of each application. So pastry sheet down, and I'm using melted butter, which has got a little bit of vanilla in the butter. Could use a bit of lemon zest. Anything that you can add to that pastry just to give it a little bit of flavor. It is carrying the cheese filling, but like I mentioned when we were doing shortbread, we should get into the habit of adding salt, lemon, vanilla, some other, like just to add a bit more flavor. Pastry tastes, not bland's not the right word, but it always tastes better when we season it. Like the chefs add salt and pepper to chips or to a meal, but we should be the same. We need to make sure that we're delivering tasty pastry. Just going to butter this down, making sure that the whole sheets have got a coating of butter. Not too much, but just enough so that when it does bake, the layers separate and the pastry is fried. And that happens in the oven. 5. And we're going to put down 6 sheets. Coming up to my last one now. And the reason for the extra sheets is because we're cutting them smaller. So we have just the right amount of pastry to hold the filling. It's number 6. So butter the top, making sure I've got all the corners. There's no pastry there that doesn't have. Going to then make sure that I cover the rest of this pastry. Now I'm going to portion the 6 strips I need for these parcels. So I'm going to cut this in half. And then I will cut 1 strip on each side. And then the last side, I'll cut that in half. Now I'm using spiced apple and custard and a bit of raspberry jam. Of course, for the assessment, you're using the cherry filling, which will be made, loaded directly into a piping bag, kept in the fridge. So I guess just take notice of the full volume of filling rather than the multiple fillings that I'm injecting in there. But just right in the far corner where I'll start that folding process. I'm filling these a bit more than we had in class. I want them to look a little bit, they need to look a little bit fuller, not so flat. And so for this, because I will make a dessert out of this or present it as a dessert, I'm going to put a little bit of really acidic raspberry jam. But essentially the size of the filling, as you can see, that is about the amount of cherry filling that you would need. So now I'm going to bring that corner over and make the triangle, seal it as well on the first turn. Over, over, keeping it nice and neat. Just going to do another one, and I will demonstrate this last part, which is just, you've got a choice really of whether to fold that tag under or trim it off. But I do, as best you can, make very nice, perfect triangles. So you can see with that one, I did fold that little tag over and I've got the triangle there. You can also just take that tag off and I will use that in something else later. Just there for now. I'll just do 6. I've got another 6 on the tray. Over. Just being as neat as I can. And probably the main point for this is make sure that the filling is fully trapped into that parcel. So when I go over, just making sure that I'm sealing that off. So when I fold over, the filling is captured. See the filling is not captured there, but when I go on the next turn, I can make sure that that filling is 100% enclosed in pastry. If it's not fully enclosed in pastry, it will boil out. Right, we're baking this at a high temperature, between 180 and 200 degrees in a fan-forced oven. This is one pastry that bakes better in a fan-forced oven. I have to be careful. This one's a little bit short. So I can catch it on this side. Yes. Okay. So we will be baking these on a silicon mat. And the reason for that is that we're using the fan force of the oven to push the heat around these pastries. So the silicon mat is better suited up rather than silicon paper, so that the paper doesn't flap over our baked products. So now going to brush these in butter. Sure, I catch all of the pastry on the sides. And then I'm going to what they call not so much a dust, but a drench. So what that means is dusting is where you just lightly dust, but I'm being a little bit heavier on these because I want that top layer of sugar to caramelize. And that goes to, I guess we've got in this pastry, we have textures that are crispy, creamy, and crunchy. But we've also got, as far as the flavor profile of this pastry, we also have sweet, a little bit of sour. And then you've got, when the sugar caramelizes, then we have bitter. You can see also how they are spaced so that the airflow in the fan force oven can move around these pastries and bake them evenly. So now I'm just going to use the Fillo pastry in another way. And what I'm demonstrating here is how versatile this pastry is. When I was a pastry chef at Rockpool and also in the hotels, we used to use a pastry called Kataifi pastry. Kataifi pastry is like a shredded Fillo pastry. I'm going to butter this. And basically make a dessert that emulates another very famous patisserie product called a millefeuille. Millefeuille is puff pastry, of course, and it has custard and then another pastry layer, a bit like our vanilla slice, but very flaky pastry. And then the top of the pastry is either caramelized, or you also see it with fondant and some striping with chocolate fondant. And fairly, this is called a drenching, so a lot heavier than dusting. I'm going to use a ramekin. And I'm just going to pillow this pastry in. The ramekin has been buttered, so the pastry does not stick to it. So I just pillow that in. I can also do that without a form, but it is nice having a form. But I can also just pillow that in and make a round disc and just bake that as pastry. I'm going to bake these off as well. And that's what this little offcut would be very useful for. Move these out of frame. So you can see the 12 Fillo parcels that are baked. You can see some of the caramelization, you know, where it's shiny. And this is how I would like you to present these. So stack them up. You have 12 that you need to present. You can use platters like we had done in the last assessment. And you could run 2 rows on a platter and just give them a very light, now this is a dust. So now I'm just going to just lightly dust. So I can still see the caramel parts. And that's the difference between drenching with icing sugar and dusting. We're going to just have a look on the inside of one of these. And I will be doing this just to see what's happening on the inside. Always with a sharp serrated knife. And you can see with these that we've got nice crispy layers. I've got my filling on the inside and does actually look a lot like our puff pastry. This is very crispy. So now I'm going to just plate this up as a dessert, because essentially a pastry can always be plated and presented as a dessert. This would be a nice dessert for a bistro, or maybe not a buffet, but you probably could, but it would make a good bistro or cafe dessert. So these are the Fillo Pastry pieces that are just baked in a circle, very crispy, very light. And I'll start with this one. So I'm going to just inject a little bit of custard to hold that part down. So when the waiting staff do take this dessert to the table, it doesn't move around. I'm going to put a little bit of really acidic, not acidic, but very acid, strong, so that the raspberry flavor is very strong. Using vanilla ice cream, which will be made in the dessert unit, actually. Water. I like ice cream, so I'm going to go with 3 scoops. Portion size is nice. Pastry is very light. 3 scoops of ice cream. Use a bit of the raspberry jam to present. And then I've got some strawberry compote. And the difference between a compote and a coulis is that a compote is a lump-free, clean fruit-based sauce. A compote has chunks of fruit. Lay that over the jam. Spots. And of course, over the ice cream. Pastry top on. Just icing sugar. And that would be a very nice, simple dessert. Also, I could present these as well as a dessert. And I would do 2. One is just as far as a dessert, because it's so light. Yeah, I'll do the same thing. Some strawberries down. Of course, ice cream. I'm just going to change the shape of the ice cream scoop. Place that. There. And I will also use icing sugar This one as well. And you have two options. I always, if it's possible, I always want you to go above and beyond. To do this, I've got no problem with if students want to go above and beyond. You will definitely need to check with me to make sure that you have the right amount of time to execute this. If you decide to do ice cream, then you would need to present that before the ice cream melts. Okay, it's not something that you can do and then sit on your bench. This needs to be a la minute, which is on the minute. Okay, very quickly, I am just going to share a little bit of information just to finish this off. So, just to confirm the 4 products that need to be presented for this assessment. You've got the choux pastry, which needs to be produced. It says they're 12 eclairs, but we're doing profiteroles. Use your 50% of the recipe, which I'm just going to bring that slide up next. I recommend pipe the full recipe. You might get 24 profiteroles out of that. Really working on keeping the size consistent. That's the main thing for me, is that whatever you present, make sure it's the sizing is consistent throughout the 12 that you present. You'll use that 50% recipe, pipe your profiteroles. Don't forget to spray them with oil, and they'll be baked at 180 degrees in the deck ovens. We've got that 2-part baking process with the choux pastry. The first part is with the flue in, where we need to trap that moisture so we get expansion and that it expands without cracking. And then we have that second phase where we're drying that product out so it's crispy, right? We want that shell to be formed, set, coagulation, gelatinization. We want those 2 things to happen, that action in the oven, and then we want to really dry it out. The second product is the vol au vents. You have your puff pastry sheet, roll through at 7 mil. You need to put that back on the dough sheeter. You need to select 4 millimeters, get your tops of your vol au vents, then that'll go back on the sheeter, 2 millimeters docked, and out of that you'll get your bases for the vol au vents and also the pie tops. Keep the scrap. Remember, everything has to be cared for. Labels on everything. The third product is the cherry strudel, which I've demonstrated. You need to present 12 of those. And then the final product, which is the chicken filling. Now, the chicken filling, I'll go back to the vol au vents, which is the second product. You will present those blank. And that way I can make a good judgment on your ability to make puff pastry, butter puff pastry. And that was 3/4, 5 half turns. The chicken filling, we've got the pie bases that we rolled and lined, blast frozen, stored. So they will be, you'll use the chicken filling to fill those pies and the pie tops from the puff pastry, seal those and bake them off. Now, with the chicken filling, exactly as was demonstrated in class, really, we have some food safety. We have to start marking off some of the food safety unit. It's embedded in the practical. Okay, so there is, on that assessment document, there is a pre-checklist. When you come in, sanitize the bench, wash your hands, make sure you're clean, your uniform's ironed, hair's tied back, rings off, and then check your fridge, make sure it's safe, look around, make sure that there's no water on the floor, make sure the sink's full of soapy water, all those sort of things that you need to then crack on with this assessment. There's also a document in that assessment for food safety, where we will document down the temperatures of the fillings when you're presenting, right? So now we're talking about and looking at that 5 to 60 rule. you know, that 2-4 hour rule, right? Okay, because we're pretty much operating in that 2 to 4 hour period where our cold things that are meant to be cold are not in the fridge, because we need to form and fill and cut and chop and cook. So with the chicken filling, once that comes out of the Unox oven, that we've done that first cooking process, we've cooked the chicken breast with the leeks, that goes and gets blast chilled out of the danger zone. We then process that, meaning we're going to chop it up. That will go into the bechamel sauce. And then once that's fully incorporated, we're going to blast chill again, keep it out of the danger zone. It goes into the pie, it goes into the oven, it's baked, and then you make a choice whether you present that pie as a cold pie, meaning the filling is below 5 degrees, or you're going to time it, as I discussed. You could, with your workflow, is you could time baking the pie half an hour before you're going to present, right? So you've got your feta rolls filled, decorated, you've got your triangles done, everything's in the chiller, and then I'm going to bake my pies. When the pies come out of the oven, they go onto your presentation, and you call me to assess your products. And you're presenting over 60 degrees. If you're in a cafe or pie shop and you've got those hot foods in a bain-marie style or in a pie warmer, you have to present, you have to serve that to customers above 60 degrees. It's illegal to do otherwise, and unsafe. So making sure hot food is hot, cold food is cold. Also got the choux pastry, and that is the recipe that I would like you to make, and I want you to make 50% of that. Good luck. I look forward, and it is a privilege to make judgment on your products. So I'm not judging you as a person. This is a professional situation, and you're presenting the best work that you can do. You're showing me the skills that you've learned, implementing those. Main thing, food safe and organized. You can't come into an assessment without a workflow. I'll be checking. Okay, I want to see that workflow. I want to check it off. We will be in that habit as we move forward. Good luck.